There we go. There's the image again. So the poor Brahmin was very grateful. Humility and gratitude is not go from one Brahmin to another Brahmin and ask for charity, and sure enough he gets something that turns anything you touch it, any metal you touch it, into gold. Because he was a Brahmin, he was also naturally intuitive or intelligent, and he understood, since Sanatana Goswami was keeping this touchstone in a rubbish heap, he must have something more valuable. He went back to him and asked him, do you have something more valuable than this touchstone? And Sanatana Goswami said, sure, far more valuable than the touchstone. May I ask you for that? And the Brahmana was requested to throw the touchstone in the river. And once you throw the touchstone in the river, you're not going to get it back. It's gone. So he did, and Sanatana Goswami gave him the holy name. I'm sure most of you know this nice story. But humility and gratitude are a very natural combination. The gift that was given by Sanatana Goswami to the Brahmana was the holy name. And most of you know this phrase from Padma Purana, Abhina Tvan Nama Namino. This Sanskrit word abhina means non-different. And tvan or tvam means having the quality of. So the quality of non-difference is the relationship between the name, Krishna, and the named, or the person named, Namino. The holy name, giving the holy name, means he gave this Brahmana Krishna. And many of us also have the good fortune of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. At least we all have been introduced to it, and the opportunity is ours. We have a very wonderful gift, just like Sanatana Goswami gave to the Brahmin. More valuable than gold. More valuable than gold. Although we may not recognize, because we certainly value gold, we may not have the same measuring sticks for understanding the importance of the holy name. But when there's humility, then that means the heart is open and eager to receive descending mercy. And when descending mercy comes, one's heart feels grateful. And when one has higher understanding by good guidance, that the most wonderful thing of all is this gift of the holy name, then one's heart is oriented for not only chanting, but chanting in a very attentive and a qualitative way. There's a book that has been put together by disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, similar to what we have in ISKCON, letters that Srila Prabhupada wrote. So they're letters that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada wrote by hand. Was, could we go back to the image on the screen? There. Patra Vali. Patra Vali. It's a collection of Bhaktisiddhanta's handwritten letters. And the rest of this presentation is taken from handwritten message to one of his disciples. And it's quite astounding how profound and expressive he is, and even as something as simple as a letter to a disciple. So it's about 8 slides. And I'm done, so be attentive. I am overjoyed to hear that your enthusiasm for chanting is increasing. As our contaminations are removed by chanting, the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes will be revealed to us in the holy name. Now notice the preposition is not through the holy name or something, but it's in the holy name. The form of Krishna is not something you experience separate from the name, but the form, qualities, and pastimes are within the holy name. I'll say it again. There are these four: Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. Name, form, qualities, and pastimes are all within the holy name. So to access, for example, to access the Lord's form, you can access the Lord's form through the holy name because the Lord's form is within the holy name. Or the holy name and the form of the Lord are non-different. We were having this discussion a few times during this particular weekend. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find a nice passage where King King Chitraketu receives a mantra from Narada Muni, and he chants his mantra with such absorption that the personality of Godhead, Lord Sankarshan, appears before him. He offers prayers, and Sankarshan explains that I have two forms. One is the form of my person, and the other is the form of my name. Para-Brahman and Shabda-Brahman. And there, Lord Sankarshan says, these are my two forms that are equal and identical. So we have the process. It does take enthusiasm, but as our contaminations are removed by chanting, we're going to hear some more about that removal of contaminations by chanting. There's a revelation. The potential is there for revelation. Bhaktisiddhanta wrote in this letter, this second little message, there is no point in making a separate effort to artificially remember the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes. The Lord and His name are one and the same. As already mentioned, Lord Sankarshan taught. The Lord and His name are one and the same. This will be understood clearly when the coverings in your heart are removed. So we have some work to do to remove the coverings in our heart, but it's not we can remove the coverings in our heart, but the name can remove the coverings in the heart. That's one of the features of the name, Cheta Darpana Marjanam. The mirror of the heart, or the mirror of the mind, becomes cleansed. By chanting without offenses, you will personally realize that all perfections come from the holy name. And one of my favorite parts of this is this message here. Through chanting, the distinction that exists between the self and the gross and subtle bodies is gradually effaced. And one realizes one's own spiritual form. Once aware of the spiritual body, as one continues to chant, one sees the transcendental nature of the Lord's form. Now, Bhakti, as anyone that's read anything that's written by Bhaktisiddhanta, he is really particular about language. He's really particular about language. Now, I assume, I'm not sure, but I assume that this was written in Bengali and it's been translated. Because that's a nice, his vocabulary surpasses our vocabulary, even though it's his second language. There's this nice word, effaced. I'll read the sentence again. Through chanting, the distinction that exists between the self and the gross and subtle bodies is gradually effaced, and one realizes one's own spiritual form. Now, what does that word effaced mean? What's implied by that word effaced? And one very simple example that I'm quite aware of is it's a term that's used when coins that are very old and they rub against other coins for a long period of time, the feature of the face or whatever it is imprinted on the coin becomes effaced or indistinguishable. You can't tell whose face it was or the year of the coin or whatever are the details on the surface of the coin. It becomes effaced by rubbing. So similarly, the holy name has this quality of effacing our consciousness. The contamination feature becomes effaced, revealing the spiritual form. Before that happens, we're identifying with the covering or the marks on the coin. But when the effacing or the cleansing takes place through chanting, the covering becomes effaced and one realizes one's own spiritual form. And continued chanting, one becomes acquainted with the transcendental nature of the Lord's form. Naturally so, because the form of the Lord, para Brahman, same term as used in Bhagavad Gita by Arjuna to describe Krishna, para Brahman is the supreme form. The supreme form is para Brahman. And the name is also transcendental, of an equal stature, in equal ness with the Lord's spiritual form, is his Shabda Brahman, his name in the form of sound. So I find this very encouraging. Only the holy name, listen, there's 3 in a row that say something quite similar. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's form. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual qualities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's qualities. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual activities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's pastimes. By service to the holy name, we do not mean only the chanting of the holy name, semicolon. It also includes the other duties of the chanter. That's service to the holy name. In other words, what are the services that we do? Supposing you cook, supposing you distribute books, supposing you dance in kirtan, supposing you worship your deities. Whatever service you do is an extension of the chanting of the holy name. It exists because of chanting. If we serve the holy name, which means all the things that we do along with chanting the name, with body, mind, and soul, then the direction of that service spontaneously manifests like the sun in the clear sky of the chanter's heart. Very poetic, very powerful, very beautiful, very similar to what Rupa Goswami writes in his opening verse of Vidagdha Madhava, glorifying the holy name. Many of you know the verse. It's one of my favorite Rupa Goswami verses. The chanting of the holy name produces nectar. When one chants the name, such nectar is there one wants many, many mouths. When one hears the holy name, there's such nectar one wants millions of ears. And then from the mouth to the ear to the heart, when that sound enters the courtyard of the heart, the mind becomes stunned and the senses become inert, or the direction of that service spontaneously manifests like the sun in the clear sky of the chanter's heart. It's service from the heart through the medium of chanting. This is his realization. Please remember, Bhaktisiddhanta was like a Superman when it comes to chanting. He took a vow at a certain stage in his young adult life that he would chant so many rounds a day. He chanted the same number of rounds a day that Haridas Thakur did every day for 9 years. He had superhuman ability to chant. And so he certainly knows what the effectiveness of chanting is by his direct experience, and he's expressing it in this really short letter to a disciple who just shared their feeling more enthusiasm for chanting, Japa. What is the nature of the holy name? Eventually all these understandings spontaneously appear in the heart of one who chants the holy name. The nature of the holy name is still to be revealed. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. And the nature of the name is eventually realized. And it spontaneously appears in the heart. So we have some ideas, but our ideas aren't yet fully realized. But if you want that realization, go on chanting, and chanting without offense, please. The true nature of Harinam is revealed by listening to, reading, and studying scriptures. It is unnecessary to write anything further on this subject. All these things will be revealed to you through chanting. The basis and support of the chanting of the holy name, or for that matter anything to do with spiritual life, is Shastra. Shastra Praman, the evidence that supports our understanding whatever we understand about the chanting of the holy name, that then can become verified or directly experienced what's in the scripture. But scripture is the basis and support, and how to realize that? Chant nicely. All these things will be revealed to you through chanting. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a powerful acharya. This is him posing on the occasion of his disciples going to the West, to London, to spread Krishna consciousness. And the last slide is Prabhupada offering Pushpanjali, his offering flowers to a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta, in a very humble setting. Who knows where this was? It looks like India, how thick the walls are, and the kind of construction. I don't know where the picture is for sure. But he is making a humble offering of his life and some flowers to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who gave this very nice teaching about, and I'll just say again, in principle, humility and gratitude lead us to quality japa. Now, there's certainly takes a great deal of effort and commitment. It takes a great deal of mercy received, but those efforts and the eagerness for the mercy aren't going to be there without humility. And when something comes, then the heart is moved with gratitude. This is our topic that we've been discussing, the humility and gratitude, just for this evening. For our larger audience here, I added this very moving message by Bhaktisiddhanta on strengthening the quality of our japa, resting upon humility and gratitude. So that's our discussion for this evening. I told you ahead of time it was going to be succinct. So we've gone for half an hour. Let's see if there's some comments or questions from anyone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have the first question.
You do? Okay.
So in this class, you've presented that chanting as the way to realize one's spiritual form, and just given a strong tendency to do many different things to try to force a sort of transformation or understanding, how do we gradually move to the understanding that the chanting of the holy name really is everything, such that it comes from a position of maturity rather than something to belittle or excuse our less desirable qualities, like, oh, I'll just keep chanting, it'll be taken care of?
Well, another teaching of Bhaktisiddhanta's that I very much like and directly answers your question, responds to your question. And Bhaktisiddhanta's message was, with our present covered faculties, it is not even possible that we'll be able to understand that the name and the person named are identical. So, there's how it won't work. And then how it will work, he explains, has to do with the conquering of the mind. Because the mind is the filter through which we gather, receive information, and then assess that information, etc. So he describes, Bhaktisiddhanta describes, I'm answering your question, by saying when the chanting is done in such a way that one hears, sounds simple, but if we chant, but our hearing power or faculty is not focused on the name, then you won't get that understanding that the name and the person are non-different. But when the ear is engaged, the mind becomes conquered, and when the mind is conquered, then the revelation is made possible. Because it's a descending event. But if our a faculty of attention is scattered and splayed, then we won't. So, how it's realized is through, he uses the phrase, the spiritual ear. When we hear the name with the spiritual ear, then the mind becomes conquered because the ear is more powerful than the mind. If we don't hear, then the mind goes, and we won't be able to understand the non-difference. It's just not within our grasp. Because it's a transcendental understanding. It requires realization. Notionally, we can say, yeah, I get it. But the realization is not there unless one hears with rapt attention in a consistent manner. Okay, who's our facilitator for questions?
Tonight it's me.
Oh, okay.
So our next question is from Yolanda, who writes, I have two questions. And so the first question, in the association of Guru, it's easier to feel humble. But in the association of devotees in the temple and bhakti vrikshas, I tend to focus on where I can place myself in the apparent hierarchy of devotees. How to maintain a humble consciousness in such sanghas?
Feel the presence of your spiritual master through Vani. I mean, I'll just turn your question around and say, I'm serving as spiritual master for a number of persons, including yourself. So how am I supposed to remain humble? Because you're all saying nice things and et cetera, et cetera. So it's how to remain humble by remembering the position of being the servant of the spiritual master. And servant of the spiritual master means I need to know what his teachings and instructions are. So with that absorption, then you can maintain humility in any circumstance, not just in physical presence. Next.
Her second question is, and Yolanda, if you would like to turn on your camera as well while we go through this question, why do we have such an aversion to chanting attentively? Is this aversion only coming from the mind, or is it a manifestation of the soul's envy towards Krishna?
Well, they're not two different things. I mean, the mind, the material mind is oriented by something more subtle. And if there's a disposition of the soul towards Krishna, then the mind is more cooperative, and there's not a disposition towards Krishna, the mind is more wandering and rebellious. Because it's in relation to Krishna, but they're one is a reflection of the other, like a shadow and the object that's moving the shadow. Next.
Our next question comes from Ramakishore Prabhu, who writes, how to best cultivate humility and gratitude?
Oh, listen to our seminar, 16 hours worth of how to. And I'm serious. I mean, because to give a concise answer wouldn't do justice to the question. And it could, in real simple terms, sadhu sangha, you associate with those that have nice qualities, and then it cleanses you and the mind, and inspires you and the mind to follow that same path of humility and gratitude. You take on the qualities of those persons that you associate with. So the association can be through instructions as well as their physical presence. Next.
This question is from Shubhra Mataji. In one of the Festival of Holy Name lectures, you had mentioned that careful chanting and systematic nurturing go hand in hand. Is it a right understanding that systematic nurturing rests on careful chanting and is inadequate without that?
Well, one can begin. Supposing somebody hasn't been fortunate enough to meet devotees or or the devotee has not yet introduced them to the chanting process, is it possible that one can achieve what you're asking in small ways, just through association? Bhakti can be awakened, and when as bhakti becomes awakened, one can achieve these things. But the full effect is made possible when the chanting begins. So my point is, there's some preliminary qualification even before one begins to seriously chant by the bhakti process itself. Next.
Just a quick note for our viewers on YouTube. In the chat, there is a link provided for the seminar on humility. So you will be able to access some of the classes that were just referenced in a previous response.
Thank you.
It's also in the Zoom chat. So the next question is from Amara Devidasi, who writes, isn't it the other way around too, that quality chanting leads to humility and gratitude? Oh, she said her question is answered. Okay, sorry, this is live typing right now.
Okay, move on.
All right. That is the last question in the queue.
Okay. And she's typing again, huh? Or she's done?
No, Maharaj. It looks like it's done.
Okay. Okay. Vangsidari says she's got something. Yasodanandana's got something. Okay, Yasodanandana, it's yours. Take it away.
Okay, this is from Akila Dardas, who writes, nice teachings on the holy name. When I go to the field of action, actually picking up the bead bag for chanting, I am everywhere other than chanting. It is very rare that I'm focused on the holy name. The holy name is the medicine, but I'm not sure I'm allowing it to go deeper and act.
I hear you.
What to do?
That's it? It's just a comment. Keep trying. We 3 times I read a very nice paragraph by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. When one who finds himself in that conundrum, that situation, carry on anyways, because the effectiveness won't be the same as if there's absorption and attentiveness, but there's certainly benefit. So with faith, you carry on and try to amplify and strengthen your attentiveness. And that's our life of Japa chanters. And be in association with others that have the same intention. Okay. Looks like we're done. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. And as a quick note to everyone listening in the Naperville and Chicago congregations, the temples do remain closed for the time being due to the current COVID situation, though we will continue to have these weekly Sunday feast programs available online every week. I want to thank everyone for your kind participation. See you all soon. Hare Krishna.